Hello to all you video game collectors out there. My name is Jason. I thought I'd do a video real quick here on some games that you should absolutely never buy for your collection. Now, I've been collecting games for well over 20 years now. I have over 6,000 video games, and with the prices going up and everything, they just keep going up, they never stop. There's certain games that you should never buy. I mean, even, I guess if it was the game to finish off your collection, fine. You know, if you're looking for a complete collection of a certain system. But these are some games that, regardless of the price, unless you find them at a garage sale for $1, just don't buy them because there's absolutely no fun to be had. These are really bad games. Now, I always tell my kids or other collectors that there's like 3 types of bad games. There's a game that's bad good. Example of that is Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde for the NES. I know the Angry Video Game Nerd has labeled that the worst game of all time, basically, but it's really not. It's a bad game, but the gameplay is decent. I mean, the challenge is decent, the music is decent, and even though it wasn't the most fun game in the world when I played it, there was something there that kept bringing me back. I wanted to pass the game, I wanted to see the end. So even though it was a bad game, there were some good qualities to it that kept me coming back. Then you got bad funny games. Good example of that, again, is Action 52 for the NES, which is so badly programmed, so badly designed, so badly graphic, so bad controls. Just, it's so bad, but it's so funny, you're going to laugh your ass off as you play it just because of how bad it is. And then you have what I have here, some of the bad. These are my experiences of like the worst game for certain systems, all like prior 2000, which is most of my collection anyway, stuff prior to the year 2000. These are games that are just plain horrible. So I picked out a few games from some of the more collectible systems prior to the year 2000. So let me start with one from the ColecoVision that you should absolutely avoid at all costs. And I love the arcade game. It's Frontline. The controls in this is absolutely horrible. Unless you have that special super action controller, you can only rotate your gun. If you've ever played in the arcades, you have the dial where you can rotate your gun. And it's a challenging game in the arcade, but I found this game to be just so bad, so poorly designed. It was, I mean, the one in the arcade, when I go to one of these all-you-can-play arcade places, I always play Frontline. This is not worth your, I don't even know what this game is going for, but you will not enjoy it at all. Don't pick up Frontline for the ColecoVision. The Atari 2600, I got over 400 games. I've played almost all of them. Airlock is probably the worst game you'll ever play because it's so simple, it's so easy. You'll pass it in 40 seconds and the game's over. Once you make it out of the game is over and there's no reason to ever play it again. So the price tag here for KB Toys back in the day is $7.99. Boy, if you could get this for $1 at a garage sale, it's not even worth $1, but I guess if you want to add it to your collection. And then a runner-up is a game I played last year, Sneak and Peek. Ugh, it's a hide-and-seek game with the computer. And it's so bad, you have to be in like the exact area, hit the button to find, you got to be pointing the... It's just so stupid. These are horrible games. Do not pick these up. These are bad games. They're not bad good, they're not bad funny, they're bad. In television, their version of Zaxxon is absolutely horrible. I just had no fun playing this, and Zaxxon's a classic, very challenging game. Played in their arcades plenty of times. This is probably another one of those Coleco games that they purposely made bad for their competitors to make their system look better. This is horrible game. And another bad one too, which doesn't seem like it'd be bad, is Pole Position, but the Atari 2600 game plays much better than this game. So Pole Position for the Intellivision, which is actually a bit of a pricey game, it ain't worth it. Unless it's the last game you need to finish your collection, just pass it by. Let's take a look at the NES. Now, I have the entire NES collection. I have not played every single game, but I played, I think, through half of the collection. Like, I played some 350 games, and I would say the worst game I ever played for the system, which is a movie I enjoyed in the 80s, is The Last Starfighter. Now, I thought I was going to be playing an awesome shooter game, space shooter game, but I think this is, from what I understand, this is just a port of a computer game. And I guess the computer game was decent, but this game is so bad. There's no music, the controls, you're super fast, there's things flying on the screen that'll hit you. You have to, once you kill all the stuff, then you have to be in a certain spot to land the plane, and it's a horrible mess. This is not worth it. This, you know, if I ever do start selling my NES collection, this is the first one I'm going to sell. That'll be bad. I'll actually feel bad to the guy who buys it. Another real bad one, a couple runners up, World GP, Michael Andretti's. To turn the car, instead of just holding the control pad to turn, you actually have to tap it. And that's so, to increase the amount of turn radius. So tap, 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 and then tap, tap. And it's so, like, no one plays a game like that. This was a horrible game. A couple runners up, actually, and Snoopy's Silly Sports Spectacular is an absolute piece of shit. Again, I think this was a computer port of a game, and it's not fun, it's not silly, it's bad. And then old Hulk Hogan there on WrestleMania. You want to talk about the worst wrestling game I've ever played? Yeah, I'm trying to think of ones for the Atari. This is the worst. Don't buy these NES games. Really, don't. Just pass them by. Super Nintendo, I have about 350 games for, and I've only played about 90 games for it. I'm actually playing games for it right now, but this one I played last year, this Super Battle Tank War in the Gulf game. It plays like crap. I mean, I'd rather play Battlezone for the Atari 2600 than this game. It's very repetitive, very boring. This game usually goes for 10 bucks, and, you know, I understand why. It should actually go for 10 cents. Really piece of crap game. And another really bad one that I played is this Pinball Fantasy game. This is, I can't say it's the worst pinball game I ever played, but it is so bad. The screen is so zoomed in, and the ball physics are horrible that I have another Pinball Fantasy game. This was Pinball Fantasy. The other one is this is Pinball Dreams. I'm sorry. The other one's Pinball Fantasy. I'm in no rush to play that one because that one left a bad taste in my mouth. Go to a few Sega games here. Easily the worst one for the Master System is also one of the rarest. One of the more expensive ones, Alf. Oh man, this is so bad. I mean, I could sit here and I'd make the video would be an hour long, and I sit here and explain what's so bad about all these games. This is bad. There's no sound effects. The music will make you puke. The graphics will make you puke. The gameplay is horrible. The collision detection just I know this is probably the last game you need for the system, and don't worry about it. Don't worry about it. Just tell people you almost have a complete collection. And then Great Ice Hockey is the other worst game. This is a runner-up because it takes the sports pad, which is just a horribly designed sports pad. It's almost impossible to play. Tires out your arm. You just got to spin it so fast and you go nowhere. Again, that's a cheap game. Just if you're at a convention, just walk on by those games. Trust me, don't buy these games. For the 32X, I have the complete collection. I've played through a little over half of it. This is the worst one I've come across so far, and I think enough people have covered this on the internet, the Cosmic Carnage. It's a horribly one-on-one fighting game, and with the only cool thing is the kind of zoom-in thing, but even that gets annoying, and it's just... I always give a game a chance, you know, even if it's bad, because I know games get better. This one never got any better. Bad game. For the Genesis, I have close to 600 games, and I've played about 250 of the 300 games, and I would have to say Galaxy Force 2 was probably the worst game I played for the system. And the original Galaxy Force on the Sega Master System is a really fantastic game. This game is just a mess of, it's a behind-the-ship shooter, and I didn't give this, I gave it a chance, like I do every game I have, I give a chance, and wasted my life. Never get my time back. Thank you, Galaxy Force 2. And the other runner-up is, this was I bought the Genesis when it first came out back in 1989, and I remember this was one of the release games, and it didn't look that interesting, so I collected it about 15 years ago, played it a few years ago. Last Battle is just the last game you want to play. Very, just controls suck. For the PlayStation, I have around 350 games, and again, I've played around 100 of them, and by far the worst one I ever played was this game called Wreck Crew Racing. And I was a really big fan of Twisted Metal, still one of my favorite games of all time, and I thought this was going to be like a Twisted Metal game, and it's really not. You kind of just do laps and and it's cartoony and it's horrible. And this game, I probably only spent maybe 20 minutes of my life on, and I decided, you know what, even if I lived to 90 years old, that 20 minutes was just a waste. The TurboGrafx 16. This one is always funny to me because if you just look at that cover for Gunboat right there, just look at that. Doesn't it look like you're just cruising down a boat, just blowing shit up, and it's going to be a cool shooter type game? No, this is a simulator game with some of the worst sound and some of the worst graphics, and I think it goes for like 40 bucks. Don't get, unless you love simulation games. If so, you might enjoy this, but this game caught me off guard. It wasn't what I thought it was going to be, and that's happened to me before, and at least I've always like, okay, well, I thought the game was going to be different, and I end up enjoying the game anyways. This game sucks. Don't get it. And another honorable mention, I should say, is TV Sports Basketball, which is just a horrible basketball game. Every time you pass the half court, the screen has to do a shift and everything, and it was just bad. There's not a lot of sports games for the TurboGrafx. This is one of those cheapo ones, but just pass it on by. You don't need to add it to your collection. Why add a crappy game to your collection? I bought these games, most of these games I bought 15, 20 years ago, and everything was cheap. Nowadays, it's not so much. Sega Saturn, or sorry, Sega CD. I bought this game when it first came out. Now, throughout my whole life, this is Star Wars Rebel Assault, of buying games, there's only been a handful that I ever returned. And this was one of them. And I was warned by a friend not to buy this. And I bought it anyways. And it's just a full motion rail shooter thing. And it's just, the graphics were horrible. Just, the only thing I had going for it was that it said Star Wars on it. So I thought, ooh, it's got to be good. No, it's an absolute piece of crap. Do not pick it up. It's probably like I don't even know if it's a $5 game. You can just spend that $5 and get yourself a sub from Subway. And this game I played last year, Double Switch, is a very close second because it plays like Night Trap, but worse. And that's hard to do because Night Trap is not a very fun game. I absolutely hated this game. The traps are harder to set. If you miss one or two things, the game is over. It's not very forgiving at all. So, yeah, it's got Corey Haim and it's got Deborah Harry from Blondie, but other than that, don't even get it. The Sega Saturn, even though I have 200 games for the Saturn, I've only played through about 30, 40 of them, but I wanted to play one sports game, and I always love the hockey sports game, but this NHL hockey game, man, you just stick to Genesis. This was just an ugly looking game. Sure, you could play it from different views and everything, but the passing was horrible, the controls were horrible. When I scored, I didn't even know how I scored, I just scored. Very bad game for the Sega Saturn. And the last one I want to talk about is the Vectrex 3D Crazy Coaster. Now, there's only 3 3D games released for the system, and I have the complete collection. I've actually played every game for the Vectrex. And this one, all you do is, as the roller coaster turns, you hit the control pad, your arms, and you do that, and if you don't, you fall. It's really just, I don't know, it's not really much of a game. You're just kind of following what the track does, and that's it. And this is kind of a pricey game because it's one of the 3D games. So if you're a Vectrex collector and you want to check out a cool 3D game, at least go with the 3D Minesweeper, and I can't remember what the other one is. It's actually probably right behind me. 3D Narrow Escape. So these are some of the worst games I've played, and I've played a lot of games in my collection. I don't just collect. I come down in the basement and I play a lot of games. So with the prices going up, you know, save your money. These are games that are not bad good, bad funny. They're bad bad. And, you know, you might as well just stay away from them unless you just like having games in your basement or your game room or whatever. And that's the only reason to pick them up, because you're not going to enjoy these games, I guarantee you. So, hope this helped you when you're going to spend your hard-earned money on games. Just try to stay away from the bad ones. Learn from my mistakes. Have a good night.